Good morning and welcome to our PatternFly demo. I'll be posting this recording on our YouTube channel afterwards. So feel free to send this out to anyone you think might be interested. If you have any questions that come up out of our demo today, I've linked the forum in our agenda. So feel free to pop in there and post. We'll have folks answering questions in that forum. So to start us off, I have Mary on visuals for toggle filters. So Mary, I'll pass it off to you.
All right, thanks, Rachel. Alrighty, can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so these filter toggles are kind of a new thing. As far as I know, we didn't have them in PF3. So some use cases came from OpenShift and I believe management. Russ, correct me if I'm wrong. So these are kind of they're really similar to a faceted filter, but they can show like a numerical count. And they also would appear right in the like on top of a table or in a like a toolbar, so that you can easily toggle through your categories instead of needing to have them hidden, so that it's a little bit more transparent than that. So the styling that I did here was pretty much the size of a filter group, or sorry, a chip group, but then some of the styling about button to make it clear that those are in fact clickable items. So I went through and did a lot of different versions. There was some need for icons in them. There was other need for having this numerical count, multi-select and single select, and attribute overflow. And then I also mocked it up on mobile since it could be kind of a heavy element, so I wanted to make sure that that looked right. So I won't go through all the flows, but I will just kind of go through all the different exploration that I did, and then if you're curious to see the more in-depth flows, this should be linked in the GitHub issue that I have in the agenda. So I went through and figured out all the different states that we would need, did a quick visual spec with it. Shouldn't need too much since it's based off of current things that already exist. So here's an example of how it would look. And I think I worked with Russ a little bit, and this was one of the use cases. So this would be in terms of a single select and how that flow would go. And then the OpenShift case was a little bit more complex because as it is multi-select and as it is, OpenShift does some kind of unusual things with an existing filter toggle. So we're trying to not change that functionality too much already. So there's certain ones that are selected by default based on what the user's most common needs would be. And then if you were to choose another one, that would get unselected and filter things out, filter things back in. All right, it's a little slow today. And then there's a reset filters, which would put them back to the default state that they're in, and a select all filters if you wanted everything to show. So I'll just go ahead and skip to this attribute one. So this is in the case where you have a category that within itself you choose another category for single select. Then it shows drop down, and then you choose that kind of subcategory from there. And then that would appear at the top to show you what your function was. Here it's just how it would deal with responsiveness. So yeah, it's kind of a newish thing. So if anyone has any questions, definitely let me know, because there's been a lot of cool research done behind this too. And there's going to be some testing as well, since it is a newer thing. So if anyone has any questions, I think that's it for me.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mary. And Michael is going to share a topology component. Give us an update.
Hey, yep. Thanks, Rachel. So initially, we've been working on the PatternFly 4 topology component, and initially, we kind of got to a point where we thought it'd be a good idea to pull together this presentation as sort of an intro to the project for stakeholders. So I recently gave this presentation to a few stakeholders and thought it'd be also a good kind of duplicate presentation for the demo. So I'm sort of recycling it. So sorry if you were there on that call. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about it and introduce the project for everyone. So first I'll just talk a little bit about the team. We've got Vitka and myself leading the overall design effort, with contributions with a lot of awesome people like Teresa, Roxanne, Chris, just to name a few. And then on the development side, we've got Jeff Phillips and the dev console team working primarily on that side of things. So why does this project exist? We've got a lot of products that are already utilizing or need a topology view. So we've got Dev Console, AMQ, Skydive, Kiali, CloudForms, and probably a few more. So there's just a general need for this across our portfolio. And along with kind of PatternFly's core purpose, we need consistency within that experience. There we go. And then also, I kind of pointed this out in the last presentation, but a topology view it's a component of components in a way. It's almost like a little mini app in itself. So having each product develop their own one of these is just not very efficient. And the idea is that if we have this base component that products can pull from and build from, it'll help them out and be a lot more simple and in terms of design and implementation. And consistent, of course. So what's our end goal? You probably were able to tell from the last slide, but we want to provide a universal solution which covers general topology use cases out of the box, but then is also flexible and open enough to accommodate product-specific workflows and user tasks. So in other words, we want to provide a strong foundation that works well out of the box, but is also simple and efficient for products to build on and integrate their sort of product-specific workflows and experiences on top of it. So examples of features that we'll provide, like, I guess to kind of explain that, things like various node types and statuses, node grouping with expand and collapse, node connections, or what they call edges, types and indications like direction and speed, canvas controls, etc. We have a use cases spreadsheet for a better idea that you can check out of all the things we want to include. But an example of one we probably won't provide is something like Skydive's packet injection workflow, which is like really specific to a networking context. So obviously it's not something we provide out of the box, but like I said, it should be simple and easy enough for the Skydive team to integrate that into their own version or build of the component. So where are we now? I'll start with design. We've completed a layout design with items that we found to be universal to all topology views. So things like canvas controls for interacting and navigating with the topology view itself, a toolbar where there's important tools like filters and primary actions. And in this case, I've got some context selectors up there, which I think were from Dev Console. A legend, which is pretty self-explanatory, but we've been playing with the idea of it being sort of detachable and reattachable, which is similar to Kiali's approach. And then finally a sidebar, which is where you'd find all the details, like for the node and more advanced workflow actions. So we've got a general layout for that panel, kind of consisting of, you can see at the top, we've got the node name and an image of the node that you're currently selected, tabs, and then space all underneath for whatever content of whatever tab you're on or whatever details you want to show. So we've also begun to nail down more specific things, so topology specific things. So stuff like nodes and node groups, as you can see here. These are just a very basic, simple example. But we're also exploring things like node labeling, showing different node types with shapes and icons, and then also basic node statuses like critical and warning states. We've got an example of how a collapsed node group might look as well down there. And then I wanted to take this time to point out the label explorations up top. I think this is going to be a really good example of an area where we pull from the larger PatternFly design system. So the labels that you see here might not be what it ends up being, because we've already got a lot of great work done on labeling from Russ. And so that's like an example of where I think we'll want to kind of pull from the larger design system and find, because we want to find as much overlap as we can to pull So you'll, and other areas of that are like, selected states and primary actions and stuff like that. We really want this to feel like an extension of PatternFly as a whole. Node edges, like I said before, are another important core element that we want to nail down. So we're exploring different ways of showing things like speed and direction and quality. These ended up being a little more subtle than I thought. So color is probably going to be a little bit darker in the next version of this. And then similar to what we saw before, node groups and kind of groups within groups, and how do we handle that? What does a collapsed group look like, what you saw before? Stuff like that. And then another thing that I wanted to point out is scalability. So what happens when you zoom out and you see 1,000 of these nodes? And like, how do we handle that? How do we prevent the browser from crashing? How do we make it still an somewhat useful experience? So Vithka's been coming up with this really cool idea of these different view levels. So sort of scaling the amount of information that we show with the view level. So if you're really zoomed out, we show a lot of maybe just little circles for nodes and maybe very high level information like a node group label, but we don't show each label for each particular node, and we don't show each icon for each node. But then when you zoom in on a more medium level, you start getting more information per node, and then you zoom in really close on node and you get the full kind of node experience. So we're still in the really early stages of this and exploring options here, but I thought it was a really cool aspect I wanted to point out. It's a big problem with all topology views that you need to solve, and I think we're well on our way. So I think I covered pretty much everything we have for design. Just want to reiterate that a lot of what I showed is indeed in progress. So probably with the exception of the layout, which moving along to development, Jeff's gotten a lot of great work done in that area. So we wanted to start there again because we knew how we wanted to build it regardless of the approach we took with the actual topology view itself. There's actually a PR up right now for the PF React topology package, which is pretty great. So we're making good progress there. And then again, just want to mention we're working closely with the Dev Console team to leverage their existing work and expertise from their own work on their topology view. And that's it. Sorry, I tried to zoom through that pretty quickly because it was a bigger presentation, but I want to see if anyone had any questions, feedback. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Great. Thanks, Michael. And next, we'll move right on over to HTML and CSS. And Christy has several updates to share with us today.
Hi, everyone. So the first thing I worked on for the sprint was looking at the z-indexes in PatternFly. And for those who don't know what a z-index is, it basically looks at how elements are ordered on the z-index, like on a page. And so basically, we already had a system or a global system from 100 to 600 where we set our z-indexes. But we were having problems where like the tabs were sitting above menus, and there was going to be a lot more problems that we kind of had to foresee now. And so what I did is I looked at how we were already placing z-indexes through elements, and then I kind of made the system where for each of these numbers we have kind of description about what component or what element should use that number. So for example, 100 is reserved for order within elements in a component. So like for example, buttons in like the nav or the tabs. 200 is reserved for menus that need to sit above components that are in the same order level. 300 is reserved for the page header. 400 is reserved for the backdrop, and as it sits above all elements in the page component. 500 is reserved for elements that like pop up above a backdrop. So for example, like an about modal or a modal box. And then 600 is reserved for components with the highest order above every element. So that would be alert, toast group, and skip to content. And you can read more there. And then I also had these code pens where I was kind of just testing different components above different components and how the order should be placed. So you can also check out these code pens. The next thing is a copy to clipboard. So what was happening, for example, this arrow button the focus ring was getting cut off. So I added an outline offset to that just to place the focus ring -4 pixels inside of that. The same was happening here with this expanded area. The top bit was getting cut off. And then we kind of changed a bit of functionality to copy to clipboard. So we have two variations. So we have editable, and read-only. And then when we have an editable expanded version, when it's not expanded, you can edit this input. But then when it is expanded, this input becomes a read-only, and the expanded version becomes the one that's editable. And then for read-only, it's pretty straightforward. Just the input is always, you can't edit it, and then you also can't edit the expanded version here. And you can tell because that focus ring doesn't come up, but it comes up here. So for the button and core, so basically between a React and core, we both use different icons in the way we import them. So React uses SVGs for their icons, but core uses Font Awesome still. I think we're going to be changing that. But basically here for this icon, we had a class set. We had just CSS set on this button to add a margin right, but that actually wasn't showing up in React. So what we did is we added another class here for this button called PFC button icon. And so whenever you want to put an icon in a button with text, then you would want to use this class to wrap your icon. And then for the table, so originally, so you see where these 1 pixel borders are. On mobile, they used to change to 8 pixels, but only on mobile. And it looked a little jittery the way that it changed. So I was speaking with Kyle, and these borders now change as soon as it jumps to grid, and it looks way smoother there. The border color also changes as soon as it jumps to a grid, just to match the background color. And also, after speaking with Kyle, so whenever you have a table, you want to have that table inside of a container, and that container should have padding that matches like the page. But then on mobile, it should lose its padding. Another thing, so we also added a larger breakpoint of 2XL. And for example, like in the website, we were using this table and it was just breaking because we had so many columns, or there was so much content in the columns. So now having that larger breakpoint, the table can break at an earlier point. So, and that 2XL breakpoint is applied across the system, so you could use it for like grid or flex or any of those. And then I've been working on the chart variables. So I think last time I presented the color variables, but now I've been working with Dan to implement all of the other variables. So we have some universal ones, we have universal label variables, and then we have variables for each of the chart types. So that goes along with how we name variables in CSS. And then for the website, added an empty state component. So now if I search for icons, our core empty state comes up, and then you can search again, and it'll take you to the top of the icons. And then the last thing also, so on our icons page, when we have a popover like this in line, some of the buttons were, when we went down to more of a mobile view, the buttons were actually getting cut off the outside of the popover. So I've been working on like adding an icon and then also making the size of them reduce, but still work in progress. And that's all for me.
Great. Thank you so much, Christy. And Ginny is going to share several CSS updates.
Good morning, everybody. So for the CSS updates, I just resolved a few 404 errors for links in PatternFly Next, and then I fixed some issues with typography spacers. And I just changed the colors because at that point they didn't seem to match the colors within another component. So I made that consistent. But I've mainly been focusing on React at the moment. I don't know if you guys, are we going to come back to that? Should I talk about that now, or are we going to go back to React in a few minutes?
Yeah, we'll get around to React in a few minutes.
All right, cool, sounds good. So yeah, that's about it for me for now.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jenny. And in React, Tatani's going to go over inline alert.
I just realized I added my demo to the wrong section of the document. So I don't know if you wanted to do the other stuff.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's come back to it. Thanks, Tatani. And we're gonna take a look at the website work. So Christy, do you want to go over the website updates?
Oh, I already gave mine in the HTML and
Okay.
CSS. Yeah, sorry.
That's okay. And Jenny, did you want to say anything else about the website updates?
I mean, apart from, I think it was pretty similar to like what I did in the CSS. I just fixed some consistency in documentation and changed some syntax of components, and then there's a small accessibility task that I resolved. But otherwise, that's pretty much it.
Okay, great. And for infrastructure, Zach has several updates to share today.
Right. Hello. So, begin with the biggest one. All right. So the biggest that we're now hosting PatternFly.org on AWS. I can just let you all take a look real fast here. So our Travis build, now every push to master in PatternFly.org pushes to this bucket, which is then served in staging.patternfly.org. And so when we're ready to flip them, we copy all the files from staging into this bucket, which is what hosts patternfly.org. So that's S3. We now own our hosting. What else? Oh yes, so I added charts to them. You can take a look at the charts. I didn't really add them. I just included what was already there. So we have charts now. And one more thing for the website. Oh yeah, so soon I will add submodules, and what that will look like is kind of important for the devs to know. So suddenly the repos will change here to having these two folders, and you're probably going to be confused and not know what to do with them, but you need to run git submodule update, and that will be the magic command that will fill them in for you. All right. And on the React side, I fixed some Babel configs, so now the jest tests run faster locally at least. We also have a Stalebot now. So Stalebot will clean up some of our old issues, or at least mark them as stale. So if you have an issue marked as stale that you still think is a valid issue, go ahead and leave a comment on it. I believe it puts the won't fix tag. Yeah. So we have a bot putting won't fix on these. So if you have an issue that you don't want closed in a week or two, go ahead and leave a comment. And analytics, right. So I'm starting up analytics, which can have some interesting things. And for now, what this looks like is it clones a whole bunch of different repos that use PatternFly. Right now, we're just doing console, like cost management, and it collects stats on how many times PatternFly components are imported, CSS and React. So here's like how many files are in console, how many files have PatternFly imports in them, and then we have what the imports are, and we have which CSS classes are used and how many times. So that could possibly tell us some interesting things about how PatternFly is being used out in the wild. I welcome any ideas for how to parse through code. And that's it.
Great, thank you, Zach. All right, and Dana's going to go over a style loading adjustment.
All right. Let's see. Can you see my screen, Rachel?
We can,
Yes.
yeah.
All right. Okay. So a little history on our styles. We originally were using something called Emotion and have been slowly moving away from it for the way we inject styles, but we still wanted in the React side to be able to have the build validate that the styles that people were using in components matched what was defined in the CSS. So initially we pulled the styles out with CSS that looks like this, which is, you'll recognize, just a regular CSS file, which is great because on its own it can then be extracted using Webpack. But a challenge was we also had a JS file, which was, let's see if I can show you what that looked like. It looked like this, and this is pretty massive, and didn't actually add a lot of value. And it also meant that when developers were writing code on React, they couldn't get any IntelliSense, so they didn't have any idea what pfc-nav would be when they wrote code, or what the other classes that were defined would be. So it was a bit of a challenge, a pretty big challenge for developers. So what Zach and I have done is we've changed this to just create an object that is much simpler. And this is now the size of the file. And you can see this is a very easy to read file. It has the name of the React object that you'll use, and then you can easily inspect it, but we can also see which classes those apply to. So when they're being mapped, it's much easier for a developer. To give an idea of what the size difference is across the board, the JavaScript file was 22K for the nav, and the CSS file was 24K, which is not going to change. But when we look at what that changed to, the JS file went down to 954 bytes. So that's going to drastically reduce the bundle size that PatternFly is affecting. And the CSS size doesn't change. So this was all just cost of building the CSS in there. And so people will see that as soon as they pull, and once we promote, see that in the build. So it's a nice benefit for consumers, and there's not a breaking change with this. It just continues to work exactly the way it used to for them. The other thing for developers that happened, we did change the import location. So instead of going from PatternFly, we changed everything to come out of PatternFly React Styles /CSS. So that was one change. It's already been made globally. And if there were any other outstanding PRs, I think Zach added some comments, but we're happy to help with that adjustment. And what that does as well, so when people are using that object, say, okay, like if they type styles dot, now they'll see which properties are available. And that's going to help quite a bit with discoverability. And also, if you're using VS Code and you do a command hover on these, you can see what the whole object looks like, which is pretty nice. So it's going to make it much easier for developers and have the IntelliSense there to see exactly what those values refer to. So that's it. If you have any challenges or something doesn't work the way you'd expect it to, please let us know, and hopefully that will improve our developer experience. That's all.
Great, thanks, Dana. And on the React side, Jenny has a couple more things to share.
Hello again. Let me just share my screen here. All right, can everyone see that?
Yes, we can.
All right, awesome. So I've been working on a couple of issues. The first one is this pagination issue. In React, there's a problem with the pagination drop-down menu. It doesn't close when you click outside of it. Let me see if I can do a little demo here. So when you click here, it doesn't really close out. So the PR I'm working on right now is to resolve that, and I've made a lot of progress. I changed the options toggle component into a class and added in the functionality of the drop-down component, because the drop-down component does have that functionality. When you click outside of it, it does close. So I've been working on that, made a lot of progress there, learning a lot of React. So that's been a good time, having fun. The next issue I'm working on was this accordion, and that's been the subject of some debate recently, I think, as to what heading level should be used as the default. So there have been some updates on that over the past couple of days. So I'm excited to come back to that issue and hopefully wrap that up soon. Yeah, and in the meantime, just learning more React, learning more about PatternFly. Everyone's been super nice so far, and yeah, it's been great. So yeah, thank you. That's all I have for now.
Awesome, thanks, Jenny. And Nicole's going to share an update on our TypeScript conversion progress.
Yes, let's see. Right, so basically we've been trying to convert all of the components in PatternFly React over to TypeScript over the past month or so. And as you can see on this spreadsheet here, a good number of them have been merged. So a large number of the components are already converted to TypeScript. We're hoping to have the rest of them done by the end of the week, but it's definitely a push, so we'll see. We have a handful left that have not been claimed for conversion, such as the page component and the progress component and tabs. So if you're looking for something to do, you can totally grab one from this spreadsheet, and just as an interesting demonstration, for now, once they're all converted, I don't think these will exist anymore, but for now, every component that's been converted has this TypeScript label next to it on the documentation, so you can see that a lot of them have been merged with this little tag. So good progress so far. Thanks for the work, everyone.
Thanks so much, Nicole. And Katie's going to share type ahead select keyboard navigation.
At least the best I can, because keyboard you can't obviously see. So let me share Google Chrome. All right. Is that coming up?
Yes.
All right, perfect. So before you could only interact with mouse, and what I had done over the last, well, I was out last week, but the last couple weeks was actually add the keyboard navigation. So you open this and you can actually now use the arrow keys to navigate without actually having to move your mouse or anything. The text is actually interactable still, so you can edit it as you're selecting to navigate through the submenus if you want, and then enter will select as normal. And then multiple type of head select is the same way. You can interact with the arrow keys. You can interact with the menu as you're scrolling through. You can still type ahead and have that all work. And escape will close the menu as well. So for this one especially, because when you select, it doesn't actually clear. So you can clear by escaping. And yeah, you can use the whole menu now. That's about it. All that I can show at least.
Great. Thanks so much, Katie. And Tatani's going to share inline alert. We can see your screen, but we don't have audio yet.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. This sprint, I added the inline alert variation to the alerts component. So the consumer can set a Boolean to true if they'd like the inline alert variation. So this is what a traditional alert looked like. And then now with the inline alert, this is how they appear. So that's pretty much it.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tatani. And that's the end of our agenda for today. Are there any questions for our team? All right. Thank you so much for joining. I'll see you in 2 weeks' time for our next demo. Talk to you later. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, bye.